All praise, all glory, all honors most certainly due to the Most High, the God of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And peace to you in the name of Jesus. This is your brother Elisha Israel of the household of faith. And I count it truly a blessing each and every time that I can come before you to preach the word of God. And never do I count it as a light thing to do so. All right, brothers and sisters, I want to get right into today's lesson. And the title is, again, it's a continuation of the lesson from Wednesday, and it is the true and living God demands proper worship. The true and living God demands proper worship. You know, when it comes to God, people want to simply make up their own thing and do what they want to do. But God is not having that. God gave you a specific way to worship him. And when you don't worship him the way in which he told you to, time and time again, you see consequences, you see repercussions, you see punishment, you see judgment. So we're going to look at some examples of this, and we're going to find that you cannot, just regardless of how you may call yourself a loving God, right? Because Jesus said, if you love me, keep my commandments. Regardless of what you say, about how you feel and how God knows what's in your heart, your heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, who can know it? That's the heart of man. Evil continually. All right. So he doesn't need our help in instructions on how to worship him. Because what man is that? I think you should do it like this. I think we should be celebrating your birthday with a Christmas tree. You know, I think we should be celebrating your resurrection with some Easter eggs and chocolate bunnies. I'll forget your Sabbath. I think we should be honoring you every first day of the week. See, he didn't tell you to do any of those things. He didn't tell you to do that. I think we're gonna deal with you in communion every first and third Sunday. He didn't tell you to do that. So we're going to look at this thing. We're going to look at, we're going to pick it up in Exodus 32, because what God does time and time again, you will see he manifests himself. He manifested himself unto Adam and he gave him commandment. He manifested himself unto the children of Israel. He said, only you have I known of all the nations of the earth. Therefore I will punish you for all your iniquity. He manifested himself unto these people, delivered them out of bondage, and then gave them Torah, gave them instruction, gave them law, statutes, commandments, and judgments. And let's see what the people did. We want to pick it up in Exodus 32. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, and when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, up, make us gods, which shall go up before us. So now they want to make some gods. So we know that Aaron took the gold that they had, the earrings, right? That was in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters. He brought them unto him, and he fashioned them and shaped them, and it came out a golden calf. And he said in verse 4, these be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Okay, so now they got the new type of worship. Okay, let's see if the true and living God is okay with this. Let's skip down a little bit. And we're going to pick it up at verse 7. It says, and the Lord said unto Moses, go get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf. So now they've done something which he commanded them not to do. Their worship is out of order. And he says, and have worshiped it. See, they were worshiping these items. Then it says, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, these be thy gods. When he said, have no other, this is a greater commandment, have no other gods before me. Right? Because I love that, or the greatest commandment rather, is loving God with all thy heart, thy soul, and thy mind. Right? With everything in you. But he tells you, have no other gods before me as well. Right? So they knew they weren't supposed to do that. So it said, these be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said unto Moses, I have seen this people, and behold, it is a stiff-necked people. Now let's see if it's a small thing that they did. Well, you know, they worship, you know, as long as it's in good spirits. He said, now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may wax hot against them, and that I may consume them, and will make of thee a great nation. We know they came out 600,000 men, not counting women and children. So he was going to kill everybody. See, God doesn't change. There's no variableness in him. Jesus Christ is saying yesterday, today, and forever. When you really understand, this is who Moses was dealing with. That's why he told those Jews, before Abraham was, I am. This is who Moses is dealing with. Jesus, when we call Jesus, before he was manifested in the flesh. So he said, let me alone that my wrath may wax hot. And he says, and that I may consume them, kill them all except for Moses. And he said, I'll make a righteous seed. I'll make a great nation of thee. That would still be keeping with the covenant he made with Abraham. Had it not been for the intercession of Moses, right? Who interceded, just like Jesus intercedes on our behalf to the Father. He was an intercessor. He stood in the gap. But understand, the Lord wasn't happy. So if you see how he feels about it, you should think in your mind, man, can I worship him any kind of way that I want to? The answer, brothers and sisters, is no. 1 Kings 12 and verse 25. Now, this is many years later. Now, this is after even the kingdom of Israel has been split in two. You have the southern kingdom, which is comprised of Judah, mainly Judah and Benjamin. And then you have the northern kingdom, which retained the name Israel and is made up of the 10 tribes. So it says in 1 Kings 12 and 25, then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim. Okay, so after Solomon, you know, he's seeing the kingdom was split, and he had Rehoboam in the south and Jeroboam in the north. And it says, then Jeroboam, this is 1 Kings 12 and 25, then Jeroboam built Shechem in Mount Ephraim and dwelt therein, and went out from thence and built Peniel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now shall the kingdom return to the house of David. But the God had given it to him, but he's leaning on to his own understanding. And said, if this people go up to do sacrifice in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then shall the heart of this people turn again unto their Lord, even unto Rehoboam king of Judah, and they shall kill me, and go again to Rehoboam king of Judah. So now he's afraid, because he said, well, when they go up to Jerusalem to worship, that they would basically be turned back to the house of David, because it was commanded in the law that they were supposed to go up to Jerusalem 3 times a year: the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. 3 times a year they were commanded. And what he didn't realize, again, the Lord had given him this, but now he's going to lean onto his own understanding, and now he's afraid. So he says something in verse 28, whereupon the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and said unto them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. He did the same exact thing that the children of Israel did in the wilderness. And this is what he did. And he set the one in Bethel, and the other put he in Dan. And this thing became a sin. Why? It said, for the people went to worship before the one, even unto Dan. And listen to what else he did. And he made an house of high places, and made priests of the lowest of the people, which were not the sons of Levi. And it was commanded that the priests would come. The priesthood was from the tribe of Levi. Okay, so he set up these men of the lower sort as priests, and caused the people to sin through false worship. It says, and Jeroboam ordained a feast in the 8th month, on the 15th day of the month. So now he's establishing feasts to rival the feast of God. See, that's what he's doing. And let's read some here. Let's read some here, because the Lord is not playing. Let's read some here. This is 1 Kings 13 and verse 1. It says, and behold, there came a man of God out of Judah by the word of the Lord unto Bethel. And Jeroboam stood by the altar to burn incense. And he cried again. Now this man of God cried against the altar in the word of the Lord, and said, O altar, altar, thus saith the Lord, behold, a child shall be born unto the house of David, Josiah by name. Now Josiah, before he came from the womb, he was called by name. See, this is how you know the Bible is real. He was called by name to do what he did. Then it says, and upon thee shall he offer the priest of the high places that burn incense upon thee, and men's bones shall be burnt upon thee. So he's bringing judgment. But let's go to Hosea. Let's go to Hosea. Because consequences came ultimately upon the 10 tribes for those transgressions of that false worship. This is Hosea 10 and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, Israel is an empty vine. He bringeth forth fruit unto himself according to the multitude of his fruit. He hath increased the altars according to the goodness of his land. They have made goodly images. Okay. Then it says something. Their heart is divided. Now shall they be found faulty. He shall break down their altars. He shall spoil their images. I'm going to skip down to verse 5. It says, the inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves of Bethaven. For the people thereof shall mourn over it, and the priests thereof that rejoiced on it for the glory thereof, because it is departed from it. So all that false worship you set up, it's going to come to naught. Verse 6, and it shall be also carried unto Assyria for a present to King Jeroboam. Ephraim shall receive shame, and Israel shall be ashamed of his own counsel. So when you think about what we experience as a people, the question you need to ask yourself is not economics correct? You should ask yourself about our politics, about our educational situation. You should ask about the worship. Is the worship of the true and living God correct? And no, it's not. That's why we're in the condition that we're in right now, at this very moment, at this very time, because we refuse as a people to turn back to God, to worship him, and we continually deal with the repercussions for our disobedience. And that's what these false ministers, which is probably I'll deal with next, are not dealing with. They keep the people in this condition. See, when you look at the example of what Aaron did, that was a grave error. That's the one that's supposed to teach the people the law of God. But no, you go to the priest and he makes you a golden calf. Or then you got this king, he's setting up priests, leading them, these are of lower sort, leading the people astray. And that's what these ministers, these pastors and preachers are doing at this very hour. Leading the people astray, and we are suffering the consequences for this. So it says the high places. So it says Ephraim's going to receive shame. Then it says, as for Samaria, her king is cut off as the foam upon the water. The high places also, even the sin of Israel, shall be destroyed. The thorn and the thistle shall come up on their altars, and they shall say to the mountains, cover us, and to the hills, fall on us. O Israel, thou hast sinned from the days of Gibeah. There they stood the battle in Gibeah against the children of iniquity did not overtake them. And it is in my desire that I should chastise them. See, this is the Lord. And the people shall be gathered unto them when they shall bind themselves in their two furrows. See, this is what listen, judgment has to come. Let's go to 1 Kings, the 18th chapter. 1 Kings, the 18th chapter. And we're going to pick it up at verse 17. 18 and 17. Now, this is the prophet Elijah. And it says, and it came to pass when Ahab saw Elijah, that Ahab said unto him, art thou he that troubleth Israel? Listen to what Elijah responds. He said, and he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, and that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Baalim. See, what the trouble is in the fact that you dealing in this false worship. You dealing in this false worship, because there was a time of famine, right? So he's talking about you the one that's troubling. No, it's listen. And pain oftentimes is to get your attention. But if you continually ignore it, as I said, why should you be beaten anymore? It's like, what else could be done to us? We still sleep. So he said, he answered, I have not troubled Israel, but thou and thy father's house, and that ye have forsaken the commandments of the Lord, and thou hast followed Baalim. Now therefore send and gather to me all Israel unto Mount Carmel, and the prophets of Baal 450, and the prophets of the groves 400, which eat at Jezebel's table. See, Jezebel was into that false worship. People call the woman of Jezebel, she's the woman of the night, or she's wearing makeup. Yeah, Jezebel, that's her main thing. Her issue was this false worship, right? So this is why they were out of pocket. But let's get down a little bit. Because they chose bullocks, and he set it up to where, hey, the one who fire ran down and accepted the offering, that whoever's God can do that, that's God. So these priests of Baal, they were cutting themselves, crying out to their God, and as at the same time Elijah's mocking them. Then he drenches the sacrifice, and then he prays to the true and living God, and it was shown unto him to do this. And then what happened? That offering was accepted. And then it says something here. In verse 39, it says, well, verse 38, then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt sacrifice and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. See, supernatural things in your favor, supernatural things that show, again, the manifestation of God can happen when you dealing with the true and living God. It says, and when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is the God. The Lord, he is the God. But, however, if there be no miracle, he's already manifested himself. He's already shown who he is. Then it says, and Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape. And they took them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slew them there. Okay, so now, he slew these kings. He slew these priests. Let's go to Joshua. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go to Joshua, the 24th chapter, because they were divided. Matter of fact, let me just read some here in 1 Kings and what was said at that time. He said, this is 1 Kings 18. And we're going to pick it up at verse, let's see. Give me 1 second. Let me go. It says it's in 1 Kings 18. And he said in verse 21. 1 Kings 18 and 21. Elijah came unto all the people and said, how long halt ye between two opinions? If the Lord be God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him. And the people answered him not a word. Right? They were divided. Right? And the same thing, Joshua says a similar thing here. This is Joshua, the 24th chapter, and we're going to pick it up at verse 14. It says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. His word is true. This is how we serve God, according to his word. How about you just do what he said to do? That, again, anytime else you see individual in authority, right? If you don't want to be reprimanded or punished, you follow that authority. You follow the laws of the land, right? You follow the requirements on your job. You eat when you in your parents' house, you follow their rules. But when it comes to God and how to worship him and serve him, you want to make up what you want to make up. That makes no sense. So Joshua in chapter 24 and verse 14, it says, now therefore fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth. And what should you do? And put away the gods which your father served on the other side of the flood, and in Egypt that served ye the Lord. So now he says you need to worship him in sincerity, or serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away these false gods that your father served on the other side of the Euphrates, of the river. That's what he's talking about. And in Egypt, and the ones you were serving while you was in Egypt, and serve you the Lord. See, that's what we need to do as a people. Turn away from these false gods in this land that we inherit. We worshiping falsely as a people under the veneer of Jesus, right? So Jesus' name is stamped on everything, and but it's underneath it is paganism. Like those days I was mentioning earlier. That's all paganism. Christmas, Easter, Sunday worship, that's all pagan. Halloween, that's all paganism. Veneration of Mary, that's all paganism. Right? Trinity, that's all like how you worship. That's all that has nothing to do with the living God. So it says, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord. So now he says you need to do away with those gods which your fathers serve. So they're fathers. They're fathers. Like Abraham's people were worshiping falsely. So it says, and if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve. Be no more divided. It says, whether the gods which your father served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. So he said, who are you going to serve? He said, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And that's what we should do. Let's find out what Abraham did, because I mentioned Abraham. This is Genesis, the 12th chapter. Genesis, the 12th chapter. And we're going to pick it up. We'll just pick it up at verse 1. It says, now the Lord said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house into a land I will show thee. Right? So he calls him out. He calls him out of his father's house. Okay? Now, again, these are the ones that were dealing in falsehood. But God manifested himself unto him, and he called him out. In Genesis 17, it says, and when Abram was 90 years old and 9, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. If you do that, it says, and I will make my covenant between me and thee and will multiply thee exceedingly. So he called him out of Babylon, out of the land of Ur, the Chaldees. That area was the hub of false worship. False worship, brothers and sisters, the roads of false worship lead to Babylon. Okay? They lead to Babylon. So he called him out of that first false worship. It's like we should be called, spiritually speaking, out of this false worship. He is our example. And to come and serve and worship the true and living God as he commanded. As he commanded. Because there were always consequences for worshiping falsely. Especially after he's manifested himself unto you. Because he manifested himself unto his descendants. And we're going to look at some more examples of what they did in regard to their false worship. This is Exodus and what happened when they did it. So we shouldn't think that you can just worship God any kind of way. This is Exodus 24, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. It says, and he said unto Moses, come up unto the Lord, thou and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. Okay, so now he calls them up to worship. Right? Now he says Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders. But let's go to Leviticus, the 10th chapter, because something happened to some of the ones that he just called by name. Leviticus, the 10th chapter, and verse 1. And Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron. Now they saw God. It says, took either of them his censer and put fire therein, and put incense thereon, and offered strange fire before the Lord, which he commanded them not. So now they're offering strange fire before the Lord, and he did not command them to do that. He did not come down. Now they saw God. And he said they ate with him. But let's go to verse 2. It says, and there went out fire from the Lord and devoured them, and they died before the Lord. They died before the Lord. So he killed them the ones he had just called. That's just like when he brought Israel out of Egypt. What did he say? Man, when they made that golden calf, when they got out of the pocket, he said, man, I'm going to consume them and make a great nation of these. He was going to kill multitudes of people. Why? Because of false worship. Here, once, and they would, God, matter of fact, he had just delivered them, but he was going to kill them. Again, had it not been for that intercession. You look at here, Nadab and Abihu, who we called in Exodus 24 by name, and said, come up hither. And when they worshiped falsely, what did he do? He consumed them in a moment. And not only did he consume them, he said in verse 3, then Moses said unto Aaron, this is that the Lord spake, saying, I will be sanctified in them that come nigh to me. And before all the people, I will be glorified. And Aaron held his peace. He held his peace. Man, and he was not, man, he killed them. He killed them because they did not worship properly. You must worship God properly. Let's go to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel, and we're going to pick it up at verse 15. 1 Samuel, verse 15. Chapter 15. 1 Samuel, chapter 15. And we're going to pick it up at verse 1. Because here, he's fighting the Amalekites. Okay? And the Lord had told them they need to destroy these people. And let's see what happens with Saul. It says, and Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken thou unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Okay? And it says, now go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not. So he hadn't forgotten. The Lord doesn't forget. So now he says, don't spare them, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. And Saul gathered the people together and numbered them in Telaim, 200,000 footmen and 10,000 men of Judah. Okay, so they went to war. Now he told them to kill everything. It says in verse 8, because he was victorious in the war, but it says, and he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive and utterly destroyed all the people with the edge of the sword. So now he kept his king, but then he didn't kill the animals. It says, but Saul and the people spared Agag and the best of the sheep and of the oxen and of the fatlings and the lambs. And all that was good, it would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refused, that they destroyed utterly. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, it repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king. Why? Because he's not serving him properly. For he has turned back from following me. It doesn't seem like a big thing, but that's disobedience. Then it says, and have not performed my commandments, and it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. So it says, and when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and beheld, he set him up a place, and is gone about, and passed on, and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said unto him, blessed be thou of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. So now he said, I've been obedient and done what God commanded. Listen to what Saul says. What Samuel says. And Samuel said, what meaneth this? Then this bleating of the sheep in mine ears and the lowing of the oxen which I hear. If you serve God as you should, why do I hear these oxen? And Saul said, they have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spare the best of the sheep and of the oxen. Listen to why he said they did it. To sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly refused. So he said, hey, we took these animals for worship, to sacrifice to our God, but your God told you to do away with them. to destroy, utterly destroy everything. Man, woman, child, animals. He said, kill them all. Then it said, then Samuel said unto Saul, stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said to me this night. And he said, say on. I'm going to skip down a little bit because he said something to him. Because he said it was a sacrifice in verse 22. And Samuel said, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. He told how you gonna worship him that way? That's what man is doing. He gave you something, you do the complete opposite, and what you do, you say it's in the name, it's for God. That's crazy. That's really a retarded way of thinking. Let me just keep it like that. It's a retarded way of thinking. He said, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness it is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, listen to what happened. He hath also rejected thee from being king. So we really need to think about that in our daily walk. That's what we need to think about. Let's go to First Chronicles. We'll go to First Chronicles. We're going to pick it up in chapter 25. First Chronicles chapter, 13. First Chronicles chapter 13. Because here we had an example of the Ark of the Covenant. Now it says in verse 1, verse 1, I should start there. And David consulted with the captains of thousands and hundreds and with every leader. And David said unto all the congregation of Israel, if it seem good unto you, and that it be of the Lord our God, let us send abroad unto our brethren everywhere that are left in all the land of Israel, and with them also to the priests and Levites which are in their cities and suburbs, that they may gather themselves unto us. And let us, verse 3, and let us bring again the ark of our God to us. For we inquired not at it in the days of Saul. And all the congregation said that they would do so, for the thing was right in the eyes of all the people. So now they want to bring back the Ark of the Covenant. He said, yeah, that's good. But listen to how they did it, though. It says in verse 7, and they carried the Ark of God in a new car out of the house of Abinadab. And Uzzah and Ahio drave the car. So now they got this Ark of the Covenant on a new car, and David and all of Israel, listen to what they do. They played before God with all their might. So now they singing and shouting, they worshiping. And with singing and with harps and with psalteries and with timbrels and with cymbals and with trumpets. Okay? That's what they're doing. So now they worshiping. They worshiping like this because they so happy. But it says in verse 9, and when they came unto the threshing floor of Cardan, Uzzah put forth his hand to hold the ark, for the oxen stumbled. He didn't want the ark to fall. He didn't want it to fall, so he's trying to steady it. You would think that's a good thing, right? Let's see what happened to Uzzah. And when they came, in verse 10, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Uzzah, and he smote him because he put his hand to the ark, and there he died before God. He killed him on the spot, brothers and sisters. Why? Because he put his hand to the ark. See, let's find out how you were supposed, because they were all shook up. You keep reading. David was upset. He was displeased. He's like, man, the Lord had made a breach upon Uzzah. And they called that place Perez Uzzah. It says up to that day. And David was afraid of God. Right? Let's go to Exodus, the 25th chapter. Because they were not supposed to be doing that. He never told you to put the Ark of the Covenant on the new ark. See, the problem with man is that man tends to take liberty with God. As if God needs our help with anything. He doesn't. We need him. We need to know what to do. But this is Exodus, the 25th chapter. And I'm going to pick it up at verse 10. It says, and they shall make an ark of shittim wood. Okay, so now they were supposed to make this ark. I'm going to skip down a little bit. because it will show you how they're supposed to carry it. Verse 12, and thou shalt cast 4 rings of gold for it and put them in the 4 corners thereof. So in the 4 corners, you got rings of gold. And in verse 13, and thou shalt make staves of shittim wood and overlay them with gold. So now you got these staves of sticks. So like, you know, you can carry, you can hook it onto those rings and carry the ark. And who's supposed to carry it? Who's supposed to carry it? It says that the Levites are supposed to carry the ark. Okay. Let's go to let's see. And it's important because I wanted to read this too. It's important because of what the ark represents. It says, and what's done there, verse 22. It says, and there will I meet with thee, and I will commune with thee from above the mercy seat, from between the 2 cherubims which are upon the ark of the testimony, of all things which I will give thee in commandment unto the children of Israel. So now he's telling you how important this is. Let's go to give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Let's go to Deuteronomy, the 10th chapter. So that's how you're supposed to carry it. And who was Uzzah supposed to carry it? We're supposed to put on a new ark. No, it's telling you how you're supposed to bear it with those staves. This is Deuteronomy 10, and we're gonna pick it up at verse 8. Verse 8. It says, at that time, the Lord separated the tribe of Levi to bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord, to stand before the Lord, to minister unto him, and to bless in his name unto this day. So that's who's supposed to be dealing with the ark, brothers and sisters. That's who's supposed to be dealing with it. It's not what you want to do. You can't just do it how you want to do it. You have to do it how he commanded. It's just that simple. Let's go to let's see. Let's go to 1 Chronicles 15:1. See, David realized this. 1 Chronicles 15:1, it says, and David made him houses in the city of David and prepared a place for the ark of God and pitched for it a tent. Then David said, none ought to carry the ark of God but the Levites. For them hath the Lord chosen to carry the ark of God and to minister unto him forever. Right? So he didn't have that. He didn't have it where other people could be dealing with the ark of the covenant and you just touching the ark, you know, you putting it on a new car. He never told you to transport it like that. So what seems good in your mind? You don't have the mind of God. You don't have the authority of God. So we don't have that. So we should all listen to God and what he has to tell us. Let's go to the very beginning. We're almost finished. Let's go to Genesis, the 4th chapter. Again, even here, there's a standard by which you must worship. This is Genesis 4. We see this with the example of Cain and Abel. This is Genesis 4, and we're going to pick it up at verse 3. It says, and in the process, because you got Abel, he was a keeper of sheep, and Cain was a tiller of the ground. Verse 3. In the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto the Lord, and Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance failed. So he's upset because his offering isn't accepted. That lets you know right there, even from the beginning, he had a standard. Right? So what was the problem? The problem is something was wrong with his offering. Can you offer anything in your worship of God? Let's find out. Apparently, no. It wasn't accepted. Right? It wasn't accepted. That's just like Saul. Why would that be accepted of God? You sacrificing some animals he told you to kill in the first place. He told you to slay everything. And you want to take those animals, I'm going to worship you this way. No, he never told you to do that. Let's go to, let's go to, let's go to Leviticus. Leviticus, the 22nd chapter. Leviticus 22. And we're going to pick it up at verse 17. Leviticus 22 and verse, matter of fact, no, not Leviticus. Hold on. I'm in the wrong. Okay, yeah, Leviticus 22. And we're going to pick it up. I'm going to pick it up verse 17. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children and to the son, speak unto Aaron and to his sons, and unto all the children of Israel, and say unto them, whatsoever he be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers in Israel. So there was a commonwealth there, that will offer his oblation for all his vows, and for all his freewill offerings, which they will offer unto the Lord for a burnt offering. Ye shall offer at your own will a male without blemish of the beeves, of the sheep, or of the goats. But whatsoever hath a blemish, that shall ye not offer, for it shall not be acceptable for you. So you can't just sacrifice anything, unperfect thing. Like it was a standard. God just doesn't take anything. He wants your best. And it says, and whosoever offereth the sacrifice of peace offerings unto the Lord to accomplish his vow, or a freewill offering in beeves, okay, and that's oxen, or sheep. Let's see what he says. It shall be perfect to be accepted. There shall be no blemish therein. Verse 22. Blind or broken or maimed or having a wind or scurvy or scathe, ye shall not offer these unto the Lord, nor make an offering by fire of them upon the altar unto the Lord. So either a bullock or a lamb that hath anything superfluous or lacking in its parts, that mayest thou offer for freewill offering, but for a vow it shall not be offered. Ye shall not offer unto the Lord that which is bruised or crushed or broken or cut, neither shall ye make any offering thereof in your land. So you can't just give God anything like that. You can't just worship God any way you want to. Last place, what we need to understand about God. Real quick. This is John the 24th chapter and 1 verse. It said, God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Again, what is spirit? His word is spirit. His commandments are the truth. That's the truth. That's what we need to worship him according to what he actually said, not what we think, not what we just come up with, or what our father, mother, great grandparents, or forefathers came up with. He gave us a way in which to worship him. And that's, if you want salvation, that's what you should follow. And I want to thank you for your time.